Here it's OneClimate.net with Link TV. And to kick us off, it's been a pretty exciting morning with demonstrations outside, angry NGOs trying to get in, another Danish letter, a Danish note being delivered, and rather bad-tempered scenes, I thought, in the plenary. So a lot going on. And I hope that Saleemul Huq of the International Institute for Environment and Development will be able to shed a little light on it, because it is very confusing now. Everything's happening at once. As you saw, if you've been watching, you'll have seen the high-level political segment, as they insist on calling it. Leaders have got 3 minutes, I think, to make, as they come into town, they can make a 3-minute presentation, some of which may be interesting, some of which not. We'll be going back and forth to that during this transmission, so you should get some shots of their statements. Okay, Saleemul Huq, back again, the great watcher of this process. And my colleague Jeffrey Allen is monitoring Twitter and other things to see if there's any questions. Maybe we could start with outside the conference, because outside, I haven't been out, but we've heard this morning from colleagues who were outside, there's scenes of there's protests going on, there's NGOs who can't get in, there's all sorts of things. Have you got some idea yourself of what's happening? And should we be angry about it? Because some of it seems rather bad organization.
I think bad organization is a good description of it. My understanding is that NGOs were given limited number of secondary passes to get in today, and they started coming in, and some of the NGOs, in particular Friends of the Earth, were prevented from coming in, even though they did have secondary badges. And then there was a demonstration outside. I understand there have been scuffles with the police. And as of right now, this afternoon, the Secretariat has closed all NGOs, even with secondary badges, from coming in. And there's going to be a big protest from the NGOs. So I think it is extremely bad management.
Yeah, that's a bad start. And inside, there seems to be a little confusion as well, or maybe that's just me as an observer. But I don't know which tracks you're following here in this multi-track negotiation, but certainly I had my eye on the screen and the plenary was on, and another a text, these things are always called text, was delivered, which seemed to annoy the group of 77 developing countries. Could you just explain what was going on there for us?
Well, I'll give you my understanding of it, and I don't think anybody has a complete understanding of what's happening, including the presidency of the COP. This morning, Connie Hedegaard, the minister from Denmark, who's been the president since the beginning of the COP, submitted her resignation, which has also caused a stir, but in my view is not really a significant moment, because what has happened is, as of today, we have a lot of heads of state here, and it is appropriate that the Danish host country field their prime minister to host them. So the presidency has been shifted from the minister to the president. The Prime Minister Rasmussen took over the presidency, although the minister will continue the discussions that are going on. The Prime Minister, in his intervention, said that he would be presenting two texts this afternoon from the two tracks that have been negotiated here, the LCA track and the KP track, or the Kyoto Protocol.
I was going to say, you'll have to translate that for us.
The Kyoto Protocol track is for the commitment period after 2012 of Kyoto, with the Kyoto countries that are bound in it. And then the Long-Term Cooperation Agreement, or LCA track, includes everybody else.
Notably the US, which is not in Kyoto.
That's correct. And they've been negotiating those texts for the last 2 years, and the last few days very intensively. On the LCA, they were negotiating all night. The clarification that was sought by a number of developing countries, particularly Brazil, India, and China, was the sense that they felt that the Danish presidency was somehow introducing brand new text of his own. He did clarify that this wasn't brand new text, but it was based on the negotiating text. It hasn't come out yet. It's supposed to come out any time now. So we're waiting to see what it looks like.
So we got no idea yet. They certainly were working all night. I came in at 7 and they were just leaving, looking a little the worse for wear. So, but this text will then be the negotiating text.
This will be the text of the Copenhagen Agreement. It will take two forms. There will be two agreements. How legally binding it is and how much of the text that has been negotiated over the last 2 years remains to be seen, because a lot of the text is very lengthy and still in brackets, and negotiators have not been able to finish that job. Some countries are asking for another 24 hours to allow them to do that. But it's really more of a matter of political will than it is a matter of allowing time for negotiation. The leaders that need to make the decisions, the ministers and heads of state, will all be here within hours. Many of them are here already. I just saw President Mwai Kibaki of Kenya, Prime Minister Zenawi of Ethiopia just spoke. So the leaders that need to take the decisions are here. They don't need to refer back to capitals or anywhere else. All they need to do is talk to each other and come to a decision.
Yes, this is the difference, isn't it? Before we had negotiators who were civil servants, essentially, and they have to be careful what they negotiate. They can't step beyond the bounds of their brief. So if there's a dispute, they refer it back, or they put, as you say, put it in brackets, which is just what happens here. It goes in brackets means it's a suggestion or words which haven't been agreed by everyone. And then gradually they work through it and remove the brackets. Okay, so is there anything we know that along the way has been agreed or is close to agreement? We're talking money, institutions, technology, forests, among the key issues. Is anything near agreement that we know?
Yes. We've made quite good progress on the non-contentious issues, adaptation and forests in particular, and capacity building, and to some extent technology. These three are very near total agreement. They're just nuances to be sorted out. The big sticking points are what they call the crunch issues here, are money and the targets for reductions for the Annex 1 countries, the rich countries, and what the mitigation actions on reducing emissions from the large developing countries are going to be. And that's a power play between the large developing countries like China, India, and Brazil, and the US and European Union and other rich countries. There's a lot of talks going on behind the scenes to try and resolve that. One other big sticking point is money. We're going to need a lot of money for adaptation, mitigation, forestry. The offer on the table is for some so-called fast start money of $10 billion a year from 2010 to 2013, ramping up to some tens of billions of dollars a year. The president of France, Sarkozy, has suggested $50 billion as a target for 2015, and then going up since after that. These are still unresolved, and they hopefully will be resolved here because, as I said, the heads of state who have to make those decisions will be here, and they can make those decisions.
Now, Jeffrey Allen's got something. Just before he does, just want to clarify one issue. When you say the uncontentious issues, as far as I can see, nothing is uncontentious here. As soon as anyone says anything, there are 35 NGOs, never mind countries, saying this is shocking and disgraceful. And for instance, on forests, I know many people are still worried that the text doesn't really look after forest dependent people, and that it doesn't seem to cater for peat, which is carbon intense. So have the issues like that been sorted out, or you think it's sufficiently close?
Well, maybe I should rephrase it. Relatively uncontentious. And by that I mean the contentions lie at the level of the details, not at the level of the principles. Nobody's against adaptation. Nobody's against saying that poor people in poor countries should be supported for adaptation. It's the how you do it and where you do it and which sectors, etc. That decision is not going to be made here. That decision will be left for after COP to work out the details. It's the same thing with REDD and forestry. It is in principle agreed that it should be included. It accounts for 20% of global emissions. We can't ignore it forever. We ignored it in Kyoto. We can't ignore it anymore. So it needs to be in. How it's going to be done, the details of it, they're not going to be able to agree that here, but they will punt that to the next round of negotiations. But the principle of including it, which was not included in Kyoto, will be adopted here, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, well, that's interesting. Yes, I've got that. That's a little clearer. I can see you agree in principle. We've got to have this mentioned in principle, and then the negotiations start all over again on the detail. Jeffrey Allen's picked up something, I think, from More Than Flu, I hope.
Yeah. I'll remind everybody we're broadcasting live on OneClimate.net. You can post any questions or comments there, or use the Twitter hashtag OneClimate, and we'll pick all those up and try and pass as many on as we can. First question is about China. One person says, is China ready for agreement? And that person says, I don't think they'll sign anything. His opinion, not mine. And then I also want to pull in another question that says, what do the EU and US want from India, China, and Brazil in terms of targets?
Well, I think China and every country that's represented here by their heads of state and their ministers want an agreement. They will sign an agreement if it's the right agreement. The question is what is right. The Chinese have come forward with some very ambitious actions to reduce their emissions. The contention is not so much around the actions. The contention is around how much of those actions that they are proposing to do domestically will be put into a regime that is internationally verifiable. They are reluctant to do that. They say these are domestic actions, we will verify them ourselves, will not subject them to international verification. That's one crunch issue. The other one is how much more are they prepared to do if they were given technology and funding. They are prepared to do more, but that's contingent on getting technology and funding, and that is still a contentious issue. The US has made it a red line, saying they don't want to put money into China.